What's up, guys? Let's talk air guns. Actually, electronic versus mechanical, mechanical versus electronic. There's kind of a lot of phobias. I get a lot of comments on, some of my reviews of the Daystate. It's like, never buy an electronic air rifle, blah, blah, blah. And I get it. There's a lot of unknowns, right? But I'm going to compare two other industries that I've seen that have made the conversion from mechanical devices to electronic, and actually in harsh conditions. So the first one, photography, right? So back in the early 2000s, I was a digital guy, and a lot of the guys film just hated digital. Never go to it. It doesn't work. It's this, it's that, and it'll break, it'll this and that. And it was sadly kind of a bunch of old grumpy dudes that would just not really have an open mind. And then, I was kind of like, okay. And it was kind of proven wrong. Like, the digital stuff will hold up to the environment. It takes great photos, and obviously who shoots film in wildlife photography? Like nobody that I know actually on YouTube or anything, right? So it kind of keeps going. And then we had another innovation in the photography industry were mirrorless, because you still had the mirror that popped up and you had a shutter. And people were really like, never go mirrorless. I don't like the EVF. I don't mechanical shutter. I don't like electronic shutter. And so Nikon comes out with a $6,000 camera, their flagship. And people were shocked that they launched their flagship with an electronic shutter, no mechanical shutter, mirrorless camera. And people, but then they had guys take it out. And they had their old DSLRs, and they're in the Arctic, and stuff were breaking with them. The older cameras, but their newer cameras were working because they didn't have mechanical pieces that were things. So some of the things, this is a really small camera, electronic shutter, mirrorless, and there's no mechanical pieces to break. Now there's advantages, disadvantages to both, but just kind of know the conversion that's been going on the last 20 years in the photography industry is just that, more electronic stuff, reducing the mechanical parts. So let's talk about another industry, which is the paintball industry. And it's kind of strange, right? Because we have now a new electronic air gun coming out that they were kind of born and raised in the paintball industry. And people, again, are a little bit hesitant, but let me walk you down that. When I was doing paintball probably 15, 20 years ago, mechanical stuff was all of it, right? And then electronic air guns started coming in, and there's kind of three blends. There is purely mechanical, semi-mechanical electronic, and kind of fully electronic. And people were worried again, but once they seen these things in action in the field, it was really, they took over. So some of these electronic air rifles would shoot 9 balls a second. It was just a stream of paint that the mechanical stuff just couldn't keep up with for the most part. And it was really easy trigger, very consistent shots, lower pressure, less air usage, everything. And the question is, well, how'd they hold up? And I said they held up fine. In fact, I was really impressed the fact that you could shoot 9 paintballs a second. These guys are going through thousands of rounds with their electronic guns, just blazing. So in one weekend, they might go through 10 to 15,000 paintballs, like over a course of a month or two. Just beating them up, running around, banging them on trees, stuff that you'd never do with your regular air rifle. And I started thinking, like, wow, okay, it's becoming a little bit more clear how tough some of that stuff is. And so no one really complained. After a while, it just was like electronic paintball markers, right? They call them markers because you don't take your kid to a sporting goods store to buy a gun to shoot his friends. You take him to get a paintball marker to mark his friends with paint, right? So that's something I think maybe the airgun industry could maybe rebrand a little bit of this, being with all the YouTube restrictions coming down on wording in that. So just a piece there. So let's talk about the air guns themselves. The Daystate. Now Daystate, this is kind of a semi-blend. It's got a regulator in it and a computer. Now this is, as I mentioned, this thing is all mechanical. There's no regulator. It's just air, and there's like 4 O-rings in it. Couldn't be farther difference between these, but I think we can break down the air guns into 3 pieces as well. Like you have totally mechanical, you have a blending maybe like this, and then maybe have a purely electronic, which maybe be like a Red Wolf. You can, I guess, consider them the Red Wolf because it doesn't really have a regulator. It just kind of computates the air and then lets things out. But there's the difference. You know, if you have an electronic gun, you are screwed if you run out of batteries. If something kind of breaks in here, again, you're pretty much screwed. But will that happen? You know, the thing that we have to consider when we're buying air guns is how complex mechanically it is. So if we look at some of the industry, the FX Royale, I had one of those, the FX Boss. I don't think it was regulated. It was a very simple air rifle. Gun Leshy, the original, very simple. I had that gun totally apart, could swap barrels very easily. I don't know if I can do that with some of these mechanical guns that are coming out now. They seem pretty complex that you're going to have to send them in. That's the same thing with the electronic stuff. So if you're buying a very complex, very high-end rifle, I wouldn't let the electronic stuff scare you out that much. In fact, it might be a little bit better as far as maintenance because you don't maybe have as much mechanical pieces. You're going to have to look at how complex the physical design of the mechanical air gun is. But just know that, like the Red Wolf, my understanding, it doesn't really have a regulator. It is pretty much the computer, a big bottle, and it figures out the rest. And that, sure, you get some O-rings and other things, but from what I've been hearing, a lot of these rifles have a ton of O-rings and leaking issues going on. And that, so do you have to send it in? That's the thing, you know, the consistency, the way forward. I just don't see with this new company coming in with an electronic air rifle and some of the advantages they're stating. I'd really love to see them prove it. And I'm not saying that it's not, I just want to see it, but I don't see it stopping anytime soon. I see it getting a little more complex, but you're able to get some benefits there from the electronic stuff that you just aren't from the mechanical. And there you go, guys. The little bit of the phobias, mechanical, you can work on it yourself, especially if it's simple. Mid-range, if it's really complicated, you're gonna probably have to send it in. And then the electronic stuff, you can fix some of the simple things, but if it's with the computer, obviously you're gonna have to send it in. You guys got comments, questions below, I'll answer it, and hopefully see you guys next week.